Hi everyone, welcome to the YouTube channel of Get Set Law by IMS. I'm your mentor Sanjana Chauhan, and this video is in continuation of the previous two videos where we are discussing the logical reasoning section passages of CLAT 2024. So this video is a discussion on the third passage of the section. Let's just start the discussion. Alright, you can take recourse or refer the last two videos for more understanding on how we are proceeding with the segment. Alright. Let's take a look at the third passage here. It again talks about artificial intelligence in the contemporary era, right? And especially its development in India, all right? Let's start reading it. Students have been abuzz over how artificial intelligence tools can do their homework and programmers over how these can increase their productivity or take away their jobs. So the author essentially is talking about how ambivalent the feeling is, Some do worry about how productive it will be. Some do worry that it might just lead to a complete automation of the job industry with no need for manual labor, right? As much as digitization has transformed the country in recent years, there is a widespread feeling, right, that at some point around the horizon, AI shall reject everything in even more fundamental, fantastic and frightening ways. So this is where the ambivalent part is being emphasized for the second time. That it can either be very constructive or it can be a little disadvantageous to some people as well, right? This is why it's important to decide how the coming changes should be regulated, right? TRAI has made a very strong case for an independent statutory authority, right, to ensure the responsible development and use of AI in the country. And which is a global agency along similar lines shall likely be pitched at the G20's Leaders Summit. And interestingly, even American MNC Microsoft has floated a blueprint for AI governance in India. And that's primarily because the Americans do feel that India is a good place for artificial intelligence to flourish, right? So the great size and diversity of its data points, right? It's referring to India. Of its data points make India of great interest to all developers of AI technologies, not just to American developers, but generally to all developers of AI technology. Now, what needs to be done and what possibly are the hurdles is what is mentioned in the second paragraph. And how do we know it is? Because, the author has used the word but, and always pay attention to the buts and ifs and howevers, right? They introduce some contradictory information. But India is only at their receiving end, nowhere close to the US and China's advances, which means India still has a lot to make sure that it's somehow on the same, pedestal as the US and China in terms of AI advancement. Although lately or recently, it is becoming obvious how much state censorship is encumbering China's large language modeling. The country is still very much in the game with PhDs in fields related to AI. So despite how India has still kind of restricted China's large language modeling, India is still very much in the game with PhDs in fields related to AI, investments in AI chip hardware, design, and domestic generative models like Wudao, right? Now, the thing is that India is still trying to flourish AI in different fields as much as it can. For example, we have PhDs in fields related to AI. This is now something that is being boosted by the Indian government. Similarly, there are investments in AI chip hardware, and India also has very indigenous localized generative models like Wudao. Now, the scientific accomplishment of India's Chandrayaan mission have seen it being wooed for various international space collaborations. So, such scientific accomplishments are also only giving more benefits to India in terms of AI advancement, right? Now, this promises spin-off technological. So, the scientific benefits or the scientific accomplishments that India has will give it more technological benefits. Spin-off technological benefits means additional and technological benefits that do not come directly but indirectly, right? Benefits across Indian industry and is also geostrategically useful. And likewise, it is only with sufficient AI prowess and knowledge that India shall really get to play at the high table of global rule-making for AI at par with US and China, which until now it has not been able to do. But if India does factor in the points that the author is mentioning, it might be able to. Later on, when you read, it says, knowing how much India's future shall be shaped by generative AI, it, however, needs matching efforts to create indigenous models. So, the author does emphasize a lot on creating or focusing on indigenous, national or local models. In this and at this stage, a proactive government role is key. This is very important here. The government collaboration will be very helpful. So it is really the need of the moment here, rather than just waiting on some large corporation to do the needful. So instead of relying on corporations or MNCs or companies, it's important that the government steps in and does something about the AI situation here in India. Because if we miss this bus, if we miss this opportunity, it will be all the more costly than was the opportunity where India did miss the chip research one, right? Besides, the government of India alone can push academic industry collaborations with the necessary weight and urgency. And that does not mean that other institutions cannot partake in it. Obviously, their collaboration is also welcome. But the government's collaboration and the government's initiative will be of more priority, right? And a US judge has rejected the copyright for an AI-generated artwork. Indian courts should start engaging with the broader issue of non-human agency. Now, this is something else that the author thinks the Indian courts or system should do. It should start engaging with the broader issue of non-human agency rather than wait for precedents to be set elsewhere. So, even though the US judge has rejected the copyright for an AI-generated artwork, India shouldn't just wait for similar cases to come up for them to think that, okay, they also need to take such similar efforts, right? So, instead of waiting for precedents to be set elsewhere, Indian government should just take the opportunity, grab it, and do something about it, right? Indian schools need to think beyond the ban chat GPT mindset. Let us instead lead instead of only being led. So India should now be at the helm of affairs. It very much has the potential to do it, except for certain things that it needs to work hard on, which is essentially the government collaboration and how government initiative needs to be the priority now. Okay, so this is all that the passage is about, quite analytical in nature. Let's now take a look at the question. The first question here, which of the following is the author most likely to agree with? A, the best way to deal with the advancement of AI is to leave its regulation to market forces. This is not what the author says. Leaving its regulation to market forces makes this incorrect. B, government-driven control of AI is inefficient and shall promote red tapeism. In fact, the author quite obviously states the contrary. Government-driven control is important, right? It has to be very efficient. So you can't call it inefficient, hence this is incorrect. C says private companies with the large capital and infra design the most efficient AI governance models. This is something that the author does not support in the passage. In fact, the author is now only prioritizing the government initiatives and the fact that we need to focus more on creating indigenous or localized inventions in AI. So see, again, it's not something the author will agree with. D says government-led initiatives of AI regulation and development lead to efficient outcomes. This is essentially why the author is proposing that the government should work harder in this field. Right? So this is the correct option, D. Take a look at the next question. Which of the following would most strengthen the main argument of the passage? Simply take a look at the options, right? Because in the question itself, what the main argument is not mentioned. So before we jump the gun, it's better to just look at options which we feel are somewhat aligned with the main argument. A, governments that lead the initiative on regulating and responding to the advancement of AI tools benefit the most from them. All right, we'll keep this on this side. Seems not so bad an option. B says, governments that don't engage with generative AI and remain at its receiving end stay risk averse with nothing to lose. This is not something that strengthens the main argument, because the main argument is essentially about how the government should step in and take the initiative to increase India's AI prowess, right? So let's just eliminate B. C says governments that actively incentivize MNCs. Note how the author does not really talk about corporations, right? The author prioritizes government initiative over corporation initiatives, right? So this does not help us to strengthen the argument. D, governments that explore models of public-private partnership strike the right balance in regulating generative AI. Now, striking the right balance per se and public-private partnership per se is not really emphasized in the passage. So this is not correct. The correct option will be A, because governments that lead the initiative on regulating and responding to the advancements of AI tools will benefit the most from them. So this is the correct option. Next question, based only on the author's statement. So there's just one statement which is quoted in the question. We have to focus on that. That statement is, Indian courts should start engaging with the broader issue of non-human agency rather than wait for precedents to be set elsewhere. Note how the statement comes after after the statement which talks about a US court judge, rejecting something in AI invention, right? And it's only an expansion of non-human agency. Which of the following would the author be most likely to agree with, right? So essentially, this is a specific detailed question. You just go back to that part of the passage which mentions this statement. Maybe look at the statements above it, below it. Try to gauge the context in which the statement is made, because that will really help you in arriving at the correct option. A. Court should take the initiative by being innovative and laying down rules where no precedents exist. So we can, for the time being, consider this as a correct option, but let's try to eliminate the rest. B. Court should wait for precedents. No, this is not what the author is trying to emphasize. The author, in fact, is trying to emphasize that instead of waiting for precedents or instead of waiting for a precedent to be settled, so it's better that the courts grab the opportunity and take the initiative here. So obviously B is out. C. Courts should stop relying on precedents and decide cases on the basis of judicial wisdom. Now, very popularly, students did mark C as the correct option. But the problem with this option was that it says that you need to stop relying on precedents. Now, this is a very extreme interpretation of the statement where the author says that instead of waiting for precedents to be set, the author is simply saying to just grab the opportunity in the case or circumstance where a precedent is not set, right? Try to do things in your own stride, right? So, not that the author is trying to say just stop relying on the precedents altogether. This makes it very extreme and we can eliminate C. D says precedents are the best possible safeguard. Obviously, this is not emphasized in the passage. We can eliminate D. The correct option will be A. Take a look at the next question. If the information in the passage above is correct, which of the following must necessarily be true? Again, this is an inference-based question. A. AI regulation is the responsibility of the legislature. Alone, this is not mentioned. Note how the use of the word alone narrows the scope. We can eliminate it. B. AI regulation is the responsibility of courts and can't be addressed through the standalone statutory rules. Nowhere does the passage say that it is the responsibility of the courts. So, obviously, we can eliminate B. C. AI regulation is a collaborative effort including all the institutions of the state, because the author in the last part of the passage does mention that just the fact that the government initiative should be prioritized does not mean that the other institutions are left off the hook. They're all the more welcome to, participate in the collaboration. So, collaborative effort involving all the institutions of the state is something that the author will agree with. This is the correct option for this question. D says AI regulation is the domain of private industry. This is clearly running opposite to the idea that the author expresses in the passage. So, we can eliminate D. Correct option will be C for this question. Look at this question now. It's the last question for this passage. Based on the author's argument, which of the following would result in weakening rather than strengthening India's position at the forefront of generative AI? Right? So, we have to look for an option which weakens India's position at the forefront of generative AI. Let's start looking at the options. A. Investing in indigenous AI chip hardware design and domestic generative models. Note how the author particularly emphasizes on the requirement for India to invest more in local and indigenous AI softwares or products, right? So, when we look at A, it actually strengthens India's position at the forefront of generative AI, because if India is focusing on investing in indigenous AI chip hardware design, it's simply strengthening our argument. So, we can eliminate A because we are looking for the option which will weaken the argument. B. Exploring spin-off technological benefits with other scientific advancements like the Chandrayaan mission. This again can be eliminated because it strengthens India's position as being at the helm of generative AI. C. Introducing generative models like Wudao, which have demonstrated success in other jurisdictions. Now, the problem with this option is so far that even if Wudao was an indigenous software or a generative model, but the fact that it is demonstrating success in other jurisdictions kind of now gives us the interpretation that it is not something which is solely useful for India. Because if it's useful for other jurisdictions, this does not potentially have India be at the helm of affairs in generative AI. Right? So, this is in fact the weakness we are looking for. This is the correct option. D says locally developing technologies. Again, this is pretty much like option A. The more we invest in locally developing technologies such as indigenous AI models, the better India will it be for India to be at the forefront of generative AI. So C is the correct option. It's the best weakener here. And last we have, that was the second last question. Last question is this. The author states that missing this bus will, after all, be even more costly than missing the chip research one. So from this statement, whatever little we can infer is that perhaps India was not able to fully take advantage of the chip research project that might have come to it, right? So to choose an option which the author will most likely to agree, let's just look at the options here. A, India lead chip research from its frontiers. This does not really answer the question here, doesn't directly address the question here. So A is out. B says India was right to leave. Again, this is not what the author is saying. Because the author is saying that India needs to do better this time, because if it doesn't, it will be more costly than was the opportunity when it missed the chip research one. Right? So this is in fact quite contrary to the idea mentioned. So we can eliminate B. C says India should have proactively played a role in responding to new research in chip technology. Note how it aligns with my inference from the statement, which is India might not have taken the full advantage of the situation, and it should have in fact proactively played a role in responding to new research in chip technology. So C is the correct option. Right? D says the failure to respond to new developments was a bigger loss. No, this again is running contrary to the idea. Of course, the failure to do well in generative AI will be more costly than the opportunity of, the chip research one. So D again is incorrect. The correct option for this question will be C. So that's the discussion for the third passage. I hope you've understood the pointers. Hope you find it handy. If you have any doubts, any queries, you can put it in the comment section and stay tuned for the next video.